The Roman army was the largest fighting force in the ancient world. It conquered a huge empire that stretched from Britain all the way to the Middle East. The soldiers were the best trained. They had the best weapons and the best armor. Only men could be in the Roman army. No women were allowed. There were two main types of Roman soldiers, legionaries and auxiliaries. Every new recruit had to be fighting fit. Anyone who was weak or too short was rejected. A Roman soldier was a well-trained fighting machine. He could march 20 miles a day, wearing all his armor and equipment. He could swim or cross rivers in boats, build bridges, and smash his way into forts. After a long day's march, Roman soldiers had to build a camp, complete with a ditch and a wall of wooden stakes. The next day, they had to do it all again. Did you know that a Roman emperor had a boyfriend? Hadrian may have been gay in the sense of being only attracted to other men rather than being bisexual, which was relatively common in the Roman world. Certainly, what made him stand out most amongst other emperors was the uniquely public show of adoration, which he lavished upon one male lover. Nero was the baddest Roman emperor, and perhaps the best known of the worst emperors, having allowed his wife and mother to rule for him and then stepping out from their shadows and ultimately having them and others murdered. But his transgressions go far beyond just that. He was accused of sexual perversions and the murder of many Roman citizens. Romans collected urine for laundry, as ammonia acted as a natural bleach. Bath time. Public baths were social hubs with hot and cold pools, massages, and even food stalls. Not always. Contrary to popular belief, the thumbs down gesture might have meant mercy in gladiatorial games. Finger food. Romans ate reclining on couches, using their fingers and sometimes even a special utensil called a ligula to scoop up food. Lead poisoning anyone? Roman water pipes were often made of lead, contributing to widespread poisoning and health problems. Thumbs up? Literally. The thumbs-up gesture likely signified approval in gladiatorial games. Roman women sometimes worked as midwives, helping to deliver babies, or became priestesses. But in Roman society, women's main role was to look after the home and family. Although Romans could easily get divorced, children legally belonged to the father, or a male relative if he was no longer living. Romans believed in many gods, including the sky god Jupiter, Mars, a god who protected Romans in war, and Vesta, the goddess of the home. People would worship these gods and goddesses both at public temples and in their homes. All the rich Romans would have servants to do anything they wanted for them. Rich Romans really enjoyed eating and drinking and would often get their servants to feed them while they were lying down and relaxing. Emperor Claudius's third wife, Valeria Messalina, was a nymphomaniac. According to ancient historians, she once competed with a prostitute to see who could have the most sexual partners in a night. Phalluses were considered good luck charms. They were worn as charms on necklaces or hung in doorways as wind chimes as a way to ward off evil spirits. Left-handed people were considered unlucky. Prostitutes had to dye their hair blonde. This rule, once again, has a lot to do with the Roman obsession with class and social standing. The vast majority of natively born Roman women were dark-haired. Blonde hair was associated with the Gauls and barbarians. Prostitution in ancient Roman society was 100% legal, and there were no social repercussions for men who used their services. The prostitutes themselves, however, especially the lower-class ones, tended to be looked down upon. To make sure that no good and honest Roman woman was mistaken for a prostitute, a law was brought in that stated prostitutes, many of whom were slaves and as such had no choice anyway, had to dye their hair blonde. The thinking was in this way they would appear more like the barbaric Gauls rather than the regal Roman ladies. Fathers could sell their sons into slavery. It is no secret that the Romans made heavy use of slavery. Theirs was an empire built on the backs of their defeated foes. Slaves in Rome had no rights and lived miserable lives. For the most part, Roman citizens were free from the dangers of slavery unless they broke the law. Originally, fathers were legally allowed to kill their families. Ancient Rome was always a patriarchal society, but in the early days, the Romans really took it to extremes. In early Rome, the members of a man's family were essentially his possessions. He could do with them what he wished, which explains why he could sell his sons into slavery. It was up to the father to choose how he punished his children. If he felt that his children deserved to die, then he could kill his children without legal repercussions. Even leaving home didn't mean his children were safe. Even after being married off and leaving the nest, a daughter could still be murdered by her father. Sons were never safe either. They only became truly independent after being sold 3 times, not exactly ideal, or after their father had died. Rome's ultimate punishment. Being killed by your father wasn't the worst way to go. The Romans had lots of inventive ways to kill criminals and prisoners. They could be beheaded, thrown from a height, or forced to take part in gladiatorial games and spectacles. The worst form of execution was saved for those who committed the ultimate crime, patricide. Anyone found guilty of patricide was first blindfolded due to the fact that they were seen as no longer worthy of being in the light. They were then marched out of town and directly to the nearest large body of water. Once there, they were beaten with rods to within an inch of their lives. They were then bound and thrown into a large, but not too large, leather sack along with a snake, dog, ape, and rooster. The whole posse was then thrown into the water, where they either drowned or were killed by the thrashing animals. They had confusing rules regarding adultery. Unsurprisingly, the Romans had conflicting rules depending on who was caught cheating, the wife or the husband. Also, unsurprisingly, husbands were pretty much free to do what they liked. Husbands could have mistresses and sleep with prostitutes, and no one would bat an eyelid. It only became an issue if the husband was deemed to be overindulging. For the wife, it was a very different story. When a husband found his wife in the throes of passion with another man, he was obligated to lock the 2 lovers in the room. The clock then began ticking, and he had 20 hours to gather as many people as he could to act as witnesses. Once he had had his witnesses, he had a further 3 days to gather his evidence. He needed to know how long the affair had been going on, where it had occurred, and who the lover was, as well as any other pertinent details he could muster. Once he had his facts in order, the husband had to divorce his wife. The Romans weren't big on forgiveness, and if the husband failed to divorce his wife, he faced being charged with pimping his spouse out. If the husband really wanted revenge, he could kill his wife's lover as long as he was a slave or prostitute, neither of whom enjoyed any rights in Roman society. If the lover was a citizen, things became trickier. The husband then had to go to his father-in-law and get him involved. Fathers in Rome had the right to kill their daughters' lovers. If the father wished it, the lover was dead, no matter his social station. There was also a chance the father would decide to kill his daughter while he was at it, saving the husband the trouble of a divorce. Ancient Roman women adored dull eyebrows that practically formed a unibrow. They would use residue made from antimony or soot to make their eyebrows more emotional and detectable. Not pretty to me. When wealthy Romans threw lavish feasts that lasted for hours, they would stuff their faces with food and then vomit so they could continue eating. Roman women loved dyeing their hair. Dyeing hair among women were very popular, with red and blonde being the most famous colors. Color hues were achieved through various fixings: goat fat, beechwood ashes, henna, saffron, and bleach. Romans didn't use soap. While Romans were to a great degree clean, they didn't use soap. Instead, they would apply perfumed oils to their skin, then rub it off with a tool known as a strigil. That sounds too much like a scalpel for comfort. Cosmetics. Worn by women were very smelly. To conceal the stench of cosmetics worn by women, the ancient Romans utilized different scents acquired from the aromas of blossoms, plants, and seeds. They were mixed into a cream produced from fats and oils. Myrrh, frankincense, cardamom, and cinnamon was applied to blend the outlandish aromas used by Roman ladies.